In today's video, we're going to be adding some simple props using an animated sprite 2D to animate them, talk about how we can place them to decorate our world, and just have some fun. Hi, my name is Michael. Join me as we build an epic Metroidvania game in Godot 4 using GD script. This is the Metroidvania Forge. Okay, so looking at our level, now that we're making it look beautiful, let's go ahead and add these props that we want to be able to animate and, give it an extra bit of life to the world. And I'm going to go ahead and start by talking about one way that we could do this that we're not going to use. But let's go ahead and let's look at our tile set here, because I do have these textures included in our tile set. And you can see I've deselected the plant and the torch. Mainly I'm doing that for two reasons. One, because they're animated, which wouldn't exclude them because we can still animate them here. But two, because I want to have more control not only over how and where I place them, but how they're animated and other effects that we might want to add. Let's say for a moment that we do want to animate these, then there is a simple method to do so with a tile set. We could select a tile like this plant. And by select, I say in the setup, we're adding it, right? Then we'll come over here to our select tab, select this tile, and there are animation options. Now, if we add, this animation is 4 columns, so I'm going to update this to be 4. There's no separation. Speed, I could leave alone for now. Mode, you can have it default, meaning it always starts on this frame and plays through, or you can have it random start times, which would be nice. And then frames, you can just add elements, and I'm just going to add the 4 so that it goes across those 4 frames. And now we could paint with this plant and it would animate, and let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So let me come here and make a new tile map layer. Now on this new tile map layer, I guess I just need to make sure I've got my tile set on there. And let's select the plant. You can see when I'm in the tile map mode here. Here, let me make this larger. And when I select this, you can see it kind of is showing that it's selecting all those frames because it's animated. Then we could click and paste it in here and it's animating, right? We would need to do things like maybe adjust the positioning of this tile map layer so that it's set down a little bit. And the animation is kind of slow, so we could come in here to our tile set and I've already got it selected. I could come here and increase the speed. Maybe I want it like 4 times as fast. But the main issue comes from the fact that this animation is meant to be played back in a ping pong fashion. And I just don't have options for that kind of animation here with the tile set animation, okay? Now, if you did, your animation may be done and ready to use, and you can easily paint with it with this tile map layer. And that's a great and wonderful way to do tile map animations. But for the remainder of this video, we're going to look at an alternative way to do it. And so we're going to create new node scenes, or new scenes, I should say, for each of these animated tile sets. So both the plant and the torch. And then we're going to animate them in there using an animated sprite 2D and place them in our world. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete this new tile map layer I created for that plant. And what we're going to do is we can go ahead and add something here. I'm just going to go Control A, and let's go ahead with our plant and use an animated sprite 2D. There it is. Okay, so typically I like to work with a regular sprite 2D. In fact, let me just pull these up side by side. And then maybe use an animation player. But for something like this plant, it's really simple. Then we could just use this animated sprite 2D node and get everything we need out of it. So you can see here that this needs to be configured further to work. Okay, and where's it at? It's right up here. Let's go ahead and just drag. Well, I'm going to leave it there for now. So we need some sprite frames, and that's probably all it's asking for. So in order to do this, we need to load a texture, right? And we don't have any sprite frames existing, so we can maybe make some new sprite frames, or we can make an asset for them. I'm going to go ahead and just create one right here on the resource. Now you can see that this sprite frames down here is a little panel that shows up down by the tile sets. Okay, and so our default sprite frames still need a texture to be able to work. But at least it cleared that warning, right? Now this is kind of the reason why I don't love the animated sprite 2D. I feel like it's a little bit more confusing to set up, because once you're looking at this, you're kind of like, what do I do? And if you wanted to, maybe you can add a frame for a file or add frames from a sprite sheet. Let's go ahead and use this add frames from sprite sheet option. And here what it's going to ask is for us to open the sprite sheet that we're going to use, right? So we can go to our levels, forest. Oh, I guess it's not in forest, it's in tile sets, sprites, and open this up. Now we get this select frames, and it needs us to tell it how to split it. Normally you might have a single texture for this plant, or maybe not normally, but you might. In this case, right, we've got this giant texture atlas. So here's what we can do. We want to go ahead and configure our tile size to be 32 by 32. And that should be enough to get this grid to match, right? You could alternatively set your horizontal and vertical frame count, or any other thing. If you have separation between frames or an offset, then you can add those as well. But here I can just go ahead now and select the 4 frames, 0, 1, 2, and 3, and say add 4 frames, and voila. We've got a little animation, and let's go ahead and just play it. You can see it's playing up here. Now we do need to kind of, since this is ping pong, we do need to maybe make frame 2 and 1 duplicated and play again, right? So I think I can copy and paste that just like that, Control C, Control V, and I'll do this with this one as well. And you'll notice it's adding it at the end, which works out good. We don't need to copy and paste frame 0 or 3 because these ones are just the ends, right? It's these ones that we need to repeat. Now you can also take these and move them. So, if you got them in the wrong order, which I didn't, but if you did, you can drag them around how you need to, okay? But now you can see I've got a nice leaf swaying in the wind kind of a animation going here. Now we could change the frames per second that this plays back. So if you want it to play faster, you could increase that. I'm going to decrease it to maybe 6. There's also on our animated sprite, there's a speed scale. So you could use that to change the speed, right? You could also set frame duration here. There's a lot of little settings we can use. You can set the frame duration per frame. So if for some reason you wanted one to play for a longer duration or a shorter duration, you could come here and increase it, and you can see it's changing it just on that one frame. But we're not really going to be doing any of that, so I'm just going to set this back to 1. Okay, and that frame duration is like, you can see it's got that multiples. It's in like times, 1 time speed, 2 times. So if you wanted it slower, it would be 0.5 for half speed. So there's also the ability to add an empty frame if you want to, and then you would have to come in here and load a frame or texture to put into that frame. We're not going to be doing that, but you can work with and manipulate this as you see fit. And of course you can delete frames. I use the delete key. You could select one and just use that little trash can as well. You can also add multiple animations here. And so if you were using this to say make a character, unlike the character we made with our animated or with our regular sprite 2D, here you could come in and you could create all of your animations for your character or whatever you have and have different variations. But for me, I just want to use this for a simple plant that only has one animation, right? And there we have it. That's our plant. And I'm going to go ahead and save this, but we don't want to start duplicating this and moving it around until we make this something that's reusable in other scenes as well. So let's go ahead and move on to that. Now there's a couple other things we're going to want to adjust on this. Like I don't really want my plant to be the origin to be right here in the center. I'd like it at the bottom, things like that. But before we do, let's do this. Let's do ourselves a favor. Make sure our transform and everything is reset to 0. And let's give this a name and we'll call it animated plant or just plant. And then I'm going to right click this and I'm going to say save branches scene. And we need to pick a location where we want to save it, of course. And I think what I'd like to do is make a new spot for it. So we've got in our levels, we've got forest, we've got tile sets. I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder that I'm going to call props. So any of our props that we make, we can create in here. You could have subfolders as well if you need to organize it. But let's assume that we're not going to have too many because this is a smaller game. Then I'll go ahead and save this right in here. And there we go. So we've got our new plant. Now we can open this scene separately. And of course, I forget to do this. Sometimes I turn these things off because I'm prepping a video. Okay, so when we select this plant now in our scene, we've got all the same settings. We could probably come here and make our default animation autoplay, which we need to do hopefully to make it play automatically. I think it actually would regardless. Yeah, it's got an animation selected. We can set the frame that it starts on. We can also give it an offset, and I do want to do this because I want it to be offset at least on the Y axis. So it's probably going to be 16 pixels, except I guess negative 16 pixels to get it to move up. There, now the plant begins at the origin. To me, that just makes more sense mentally. It's not going to affect too much. But now we've got, not only do we have a plant scene, but it's going to be easy to reuse and place. And then any changes we make to this, like if we need to update the animation or whatever, that will be applied to all plants throughout the game, right? So now we've got this plant. Here's what I'm going to do. In order to keep these organized, I'm going to create a new node 2D. We'll just add this here. And I'm going to give this node 2D a name. I'm going to just probably call it props or something like that. And I'm going to put my plant underneath that as a child. So now I've got this props layer, so I can collapse it, turn it on and off, and all of my props will be underneath it. So I can just change them, move them all together if I need to. You might need multiple props nodes if you need to adjust positioning or coloring of them as a group, but this is a good start, right? Just an organizational thing. So now I can take this plant and I can start moving it around and just duplicate it, move it again. You could even come in here, and even though these plants are a copy of a scene, because we've made this scene based off of our animated sprite 2D, we could come in here and flip one, or you could even change the speed scale. You know, maybe this one's a little bit faster moving. So I'm just going to duplicate some of these and place them around my world to give it some decorations. And I'll probably adjust a couple of these as well, but let's see. Put this one right here. I'm going to take my original plant that I didn't flip and duplicate this a few times. And the one thing I like about having them kind of on their own node is you're not restricted to that strict grid. You can have some a little bit higher, you can have some lower. Just do whatever you want with them, right? Kind of makes it fun to place. It makes it feel a little bit more organic because things aren't going to be so strict, so strictly placed, you know, that it feels too uniform. Okay, now I'm going to select just some of these at random, just like that, by holding Control, and I'm going to adjust these to have a speed scale of like 1.4, and then I'm going to select a few other ones, and these are going to have a speed scale of maybe 0.8. And I don't know if I need to select any others, but let's go ahead and just test out this level and see how our plants look in the game. Where's my player? Make sure that you haven't turned your player visibility off like I have. Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead and try this. Cool. So we've got these plants. They're placed nicely. They're animated. They're not super uniform. Some of them are moving faster. Some of them are moving slower, right? Like this guy up here is moving pretty slow. And that's pretty much all there is to making these simple animated props that we can place around the world. Now, of course, we could do things like have another layer like this. Let me go ahead and just duplicate this for fun. And I'm going to just drag it off a little bit. Okay, so this is not going to be a perfect example. So we'll take this other props layer that I've created, and I'm going to go ahead and modulate it, kind of like we've done, right, with these trees and other things. We'll just make it kind of a darker blue tint. Kind of like that, maybe. And then we can take these. Now we probably need to move them. Let's go ahead and, you know, we can maybe just take this prop thing and drag it way behind at least our regular tile maps so that it's in the background a little bit. And then we also probably need to come through here and select some of these and move them about so they're not, you know, totally obviously repeating the other ones that we've got. Okay. Okay. Oh, that one looks nasty, floating up in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so there we go. So just by adding a few extra plants in the background, it's going to add a little bit more flavor, right? A little bit more variety to the world. And there we go. Now these animated sprite 2Ds are going to be fairly inexpensive and cheap. And because they're all reusing the same texture, and in fact, they're reusing the texture that we're using for our level, it's not an extra texture item that gets loaded. Now, we had a good question in the last video that I'm not going to cover in depth today, but it's regarding performance, size of a level, and how much stuff you can put in a level. And the answer to that isn't super cut and dry, right? It's based off of a combination of many factors that can be complicated. But if we're just talking about images, then there's going to be kind of a theoretical limit to how many images you can put into a scene based off of maybe your GPU and your CPU and things like that, as well as RAM size. But this is going to be pretty lightweight. And let's go ahead and see if we can open a profiler and just look and see how our game is being handled by the Godot engine and my computer. Okay, we're going to take this scene. I'm going to go back to Godot and let's look here in the debugger. I want to open this debugger and we've got some things that we haven't really been using, like profiler, visual profiler, monitors, video RAM, etc. Right? We're not going to really care about network profiler. We're not doing any multiplayer. I've never used miscellaneous. I'll have to learn what this is for. But let's start by looking at the video RAM. You can see here at the top line that we're only using 17.21 is that megabits or bytes? Let's see. I think like that MI is confusing me, but when I hover over it, right, you can see what it's saying, how many bytes it is. And we could export this, but it shows you what the textures are and how much usage they're contributing to this total number up here, right? Now, what's interesting is you can see a few resources that we're loading, like we've got forest tile set and a few other things. Okay, we've got some gradient textures that we've created. I'm not sure what these meshes are referring to. We'd have to look, but they're pretty small, 288 bytes a piece. Okay. All of this is what's being rendered to our game. That's really small. That's not a lot of usage. If we go over here to like our profiler or our visual profiler, we can start these and we're going to get an output of what's going on here. Okay. And this gets kind of complicated. You can see what we're looking at here with a visual profiler. We've got a measurement. We can do frame percentage or frame time in milliseconds. And a lot of this, I mean, you can have this auto start by the way, so that it starts every time you run the game. You can see my CPU is having an average frame time of 16.67 milliseconds, and so is my GPU. We've got some spikes happening here. I think that this profiler over here, though, is a little bit easier to understand. So I'm going to turn this on. And we can see the frame times, physics frame time, physics time. We could turn on multiple things, and we could see our general frame time is kind of hovering between 4 and 7. Oh, or is that 9 milliseconds per frame, right? So, I mean, those numbers are in the 140 frames per second that we're managing to process. And this is just strictly referring to, our process time. That's everything that happens in the process tick of our game. So when we write functions that are happening in process, they affect this process time. Anything we write that affects physics time is right here. And we can see our physics time is pretty low. Our process time, physics frame time is higher. But then we can come down here. Obviously, this is just kind of general stuff. We've got our physics 3D and 2D audio thread. We're not really doing audio. Let's see what else. I don't like that it's hopping around a little bit on me. We can see, if we stop this, we can see we've got our script functions. You can see how much time is being dedicated. Our player's process is 0.02 milliseconds. That's like hardly anything, right? That's pretty good, I think. Okay. So you can come in here and you can look at and kind of help debug. So if you're noticing that your game is running slow, you can use these tools to kind of come in and get a sense for what's going on, right? If we want to make this bigger, let's go ahead and do this. There's some tools that you can start looking at, if you're worried about your performance. You've got monitors in here. You can monitor frames per second. We're kind of capped out at 144 because that's what my screen is here. But you could just turn on these things. Actually, this monitor section is probably one of the most helpful ones. You can see that our memory is here. So if we're worried about how much memory we're using, we could check that out. And if you're having to slow down, it's generally going to happen either in your process or physics process or potentially your memory. Okay. Everything else is generally going to be pretty good. We've only got one active physics object right now because we've only got our player in there. Yeah, we're not using navigation agents or anything like that. Okay. So just a little bit of an insight into how to look at the performance and profile and see how our game's running. Okay, so we've managed to decorate this level just a little bit, right? We've got our little plants in there. Let me show you the next two screens. Now, I haven't shown you what I've done with this screen here. You can see I've darkened it. I've made the sky darker. all of my background elements start pretty dark and fade. And I've even added an extra fog layer here. You can see it's in front of the player and in front of the ground a little bit, in addition to the fog layer in front of the parallax. So got that going on, and I've got these fun plants. So this scene's looking pretty nice. We're starting to, approach the castle here. And likewise, let's go ahead and go to my scene 3 that I've got, my third little section. Now this one, not a whole lot going on. Okay, so far this is looking maybe kind of plain compared to the other two, but both this and this section here and others are going to need some additional props, right? So let's go ahead and build another prop here. We'll build the torch prop and we'll place it around. Okay, here's level 2, right? And it's quite complicated when it comes to decorations, but still a little bit bland. There's not a whole lot of variety to it. So let's go ahead and create our new prop. And I'm going to go ahead and just come down here to my level prop folder where we've got this plant. And I'm going to just make a new scene. And we can call this one torch. And there we go. Now we'll change this root type, I guess, so that it can be an animated sprite 2D as well. Okay, and then we need to set up our sprite frames. So we'll just say new sprite frames. Go ahead and click on that. And we'll do this same thing, add frames from sprite sheet. It's remembering where I was, so that's nice and quick. Now this one's a little bit different because our torch is 2 tile grids tall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the vertical to 8. I think the placement's just right for that. Yeah, it is. Okay, there we go. So those are the 4 or 5 frames actually that we want. I'm going to add those. Now these frames, let's go ahead and play this. Take a peek, have a look-see here. I'm going to set my default to autoplay. I mean, it actually looks fine. We just maybe need to increase the frames per second. Right? I don't know. 12, I think, is kind of how I designed it. But you can adjust it as you see fit. Very simple. Let's go ahead and adjust the offset on this as well. So the Y is going to be a negative 32 offset on this one. And that thing's all ready to place, right? I mean, this is super simple. You don't need this video to figure this stuff out, but hopefully this gives you ideas about how to use these new nodes and ideas on how to make your level look nice. So let's go back to level 2, and under my props folder, I'm going to just do a Shift Control A and search for my torch. Boink. There we go. Okay. So now this torch, I'm going to drop a couple torches throughout. So I'm going to have one here. You'll notice that this asset has a tiny bit of a drop shadow kind of baked into the bottom of that, or cast shadow maybe I should say, baked into that texture. So I'm going to add one here. And then I'm going to add a couple as we get towards the end of this screen. Okay. Just like that. And let's go ahead and test this one out. There we go. We've got a torch. Now, it's not emitting a light currently. We'll deal with that in the next episode, right, where we're going to be talking about our world and environment lighting. But at least we've got these torches placed. The animation is kind of pleasing, and you can go ahead and build your own and place them and do that. So let's place a few in level 3 as well. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this props folder or node. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to scene 3, and I'm going to paste it. And voila. I don't want any of the plant props, but I can simply just select those and hit delete. And I missed one. I mean, maybe we have a plant growing down here. I don't know. I've got my grid turned on. I don't really want grid snapping for this. This is kind of goofy. I'm just going to add one for fun. Okay, so now we could come in here, place our torches, and I'm guessing these torches are going to be placed a lot more uniformly when they're in here, but whatever, you can do whatever you want with them, right? I'm going to try and place it kind of in the middle-ish of that tile there. Okay, just place a couple more. Now this is going to become pretty important. In this level, obviously we'd want it to become dark. So maybe it's like hard to see in here, and these torches provide light. And so the torches feel like a safe space. We don't have that set up currently, but we'll get there in the next video. Okay, so we can go ahead and let me just run scene 2 and drop down. Okay, we've got our torches. Okay, and a random plant. And there we have it. So I hope you guys have had some fun learning about how to make these new animated sprite 2Ds and further decorate your levels. Now your job obviously is to continue to do this. In the next video, we're going to be focusing on the environment lighting. So we're going to make it so that we can add lights to our environment that affect everything, and they'll light, and we can control what gets lit and what doesn't. And we'll also add lights to our world by adding lights, like for example to our torch prop here. But we'll also be creating some kind of light stream effect, light shaft effect that we can add, you know, as if there's lights coming down from the tree canopy or something like that. Okay, so stay tuned if you want to watch that video. It'll be coming out pretty soon. If you're new to my channel, go ahead and please subscribe. And if you guys could like and comment on the video to help YouTube know that it's maybe worthwhile, then I greatly appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you next time.